This is Harsh Rules. I'm Ben Harsh, and today we're going to take a look at the new rules and updated features in War Room 2nd Edition. War Room 2nd Edition is currently being prepared for release in 2022. This game will be published by Nightingale Games and designed by Larry Harris Jr. War Room supports from 2 to 6 players and takes from 2 to 6 hours to play. Before we begin this episode, I'd like to recognize the Harsh Rules Patreon supporters that help make content like this possible. If you'd like to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/harshrules to learn more. And once again, thank you for your support. The first edition of War Room is sold out, but fortunately, Nightingale Games launched a successful Kickstarter for the 2nd edition. And it's still available for pre-sale until the end of 2021. However, this 2nd edition is not like newer versions of games we've seen from other publishers, where once the new edition comes out, the older edition is outdated and forces everyone to upgrade. The primary mission of the 2nd edition is to get more copies of the game into players' hands. To that end, the 2nd edition is a slightly streamlined version of the 1st edition. If you already own the 1st edition, then don't worry, you're not going to be left behind. Revised components from the 2nd edition will be made available on the Nightingale Games store. And classic game components that are retired in the 2nd edition will also be available in the Nightingale Games store for 2nd edition owners. So everybody wins here. The primary mission of the 2nd edition is to get more copies of the game into players' hands. To that end, the 2nd edition is a slightly streamlined version of the 1st edition. If you already own the 1st edition, then don't worry, you're not going to be left behind. Revised components from the 2nd edition will be made available on the Nightingale Games store. And classic game components that are retired in the 2nd edition will also be available in the Nightingale Games store for 2nd edition owners. So everybody wins here. This episode focuses on 3 aspects of the 2nd edition regarding new rules and their game components. First, we're going to take a look at the revised morale board's rearranged design. Then, we'll review the new quick battle rules. These optional rules reduce overall playtime by removing unit stances, and there are no repairs or partial damage. The quick battle system also allows players to conduct combat without removing game pieces from the map. And finally, we're going to cover the Nano Expansion. This provides new tokens and rules to boost submarine abilities. Together, these updates add quality of life enhancements and additional challenges for all players of War Room. We've got quite a few things to talk about, so let's get started. First off, let's do a side-by-side comparison of the 1st edition's morale board with the 2nd edition to see how it's been reorganized. Once again, both of these boards function with the same rule set, so either will work regardless of what edition of the game you have. The biggest change between these boards is the newspaper stress tokens and their spaces have been retired in the 2nd edition. While functional, players found that piling up tokens in these spaces could be a little crowded. Instead, the 2nd edition uses a track where players can monitor their stress with a national flag marker. Each nation's stress threshold has been moved to the track for additional clarity. Also note, the revised morale board expands the casualty to stress conversion table to 6 stress if casualties exceed 110 points. This provides an additional penalty for players with extremely high casualties. Another significant change is the overall layout. In the 1st edition, China had prime front and center real estate that it really wasn't using since they're limited to only a few game pieces. In the 2nd edition, by resizing China, this allowed each nation's casualty row to be flipped into a column. And now China has been tucked into the lower left-hand corner as a more efficient use of space. Some of that reclaimed real estate has been added to the metal spaces at the bottom of the screen, In the first edition, the metal section was squeezed into a column on the far left side of the board. This, along with the stress tokens, also added to that piled up look. Now these metal spaces have more prominence and breathing room. In summary, I feel the second edition's morale board is better organized and better communicates the game mechanics with the new stress track than the first edition version. It's a nice upgrade. However, the older design, once you've learned how it all works, is still adequate to play the game. So it's up to your own personal preference whether you feel the need to upgrade. And now that we've compared the two, let's take a closer look at the second edition's morale board. Like in the first edition, this is a double-sided board. One side of the board displays the stress thresholds for the global and Eastern Front scenarios. This side of the board is labeled and bordered in gold. And the reverse side of the morale board shows the stress thresholds for the war in Europe and the war in the Pacific scenarios. This side is labeled and bordered in silver. The hope here is that the gold and silver will keep players from starting a game scenario and use the wrong side of the morale board. Besides the different stress thresholds on each side, the stress mechanics on the boards are the same between scenarios. Players place game piece casualties on their appropriate spaces. Those casualties are then totaled based on the rates next to each column. The grand totals are then mapped to the casualty to stress conversion track at the top of the board. The total number of stress points, the range of smaller numbers, will tell players the amount of stress, the bigger number, they've accumulated. That larger stress number then advances the nation's emblem on the stress track. Later in the morale phase, if a threshold is met, the stress is deducted, and this impacts the nation's homeland status. Players can also spend medals or civilian good tokens they've earned at the bottom of the board to reduce stress levels on the track, or spend tokens equal to their stress threshold to improve their nation's homeland status by 1 level. And that's basically how the new board works. Next, let's take a look at the quick battle system. A new gameplay option offered with the second edition is the quick battle rules. To implement these rules, the second edition comes with 2 quick battle charts, which are dry erase boards that can be reused. The red board is for the Axis player, the blue board for the Allies. These boards are double-sided, one side for land battles and the other side for naval battles. One major time saver with the quick battle system is that command stacks no longer need to be removed from the world map. Instead, battles are resolved directly on these charts. Next, we're going to walk through how this new system works, which is conducted in 5 steps. For this illustration, I will be showing the quick land battle chart for the Axis player. The Allied player would be following these steps simultaneously on their chart. Some notes before we start though. These rules capture all the fundamentals of the full battle system. The left side of the chart handles the air stage, the right side the surface stage. There is also a distinct stance row for resolving strategic bombing raids. Land battles that incorporate air and surface or strategic bombing raids follow the same sequencing rules from the full battle system. For example, air units that are eliminated in the air battle stage do not continue on to the surface battle stage. Now let's walk through the steps. In Step A, players record units. Each commander records the number of his units per type participating in the battle in the center area of all rows. If directing multiple nations, write values in columns aligned with the corresponding flag. Be sure to exclude troop transports. In the quick battle rules, players only assign stances for bombers in land battles where there is a potential target for a strategic bombing raid. Also, be sure to update the air unit totals after the air battle stage is resolved, as eliminated air units do not battle in the surface battle stage. In Step B, calculate dice to be rolled by each side. For each participating unit type, multiply the number of units by its combat value for the current battle stage. For air combat, use the left side of the chart. For land combat, use the right side. Each commander then totals his column for the current battle stage and notes how many dice to roll. A quick reminder, be sure to check for force advantage in the surface battle stage. If one side has a majority of land or naval unit types, then that side has force advantage. Remember, this is how many types of units are in the battle, not the total count of units. For the side with fewer land or naval unit types, black and white die results become misses and may not be used at all. Another quick reminder before we move on. The second edition includes an advanced optional rule for force advantage batch caps. This optional rule is only applicable in the surface battle stage. With this rule, a side with one fewer land or naval unit type can only roll up to 2 batches of dice. When using this optional rule, draw a slash through the third batch field. A side with 2 or more fewer land or naval unit types can only roll 1 batch of dice. When this occurs, draw slashes through the second and third batch fields. In Step C, players roll dice in batches. Just like the main battle rules, dice are rolled in batches of 10, with a maximum of 30 dice that can be rolled. In other words, 3 batches. If there is only 1 die to be rolled in the last batch, add a second die. In Step D, players assign hits. To understand all the options available, let's take a look at specific die results. With the quick battle rules, to eliminate most units, a pairing of that unit's color is needed. Black die results are wild and can be paired with any color or each other. White die results are also wild. However, white die results can only be paired with a color or black. Also, a white die result cannot be paired to another white die result. Only one white die result pairing may be applied to each unit. In regards to naval battles, there are some differences in the process. With the quick battle rules, there are no repairs to units. Therefore, capital ships, in other words battleships and carriers, require triplets to destroy. And like before, only one white die result can be added to a triplet. Also like before, only one triplet with a white die result may be applied to each unit. The other differences of naval battles to land battles are as follows. Players with port advantage receive a bonus of 2 additional dice added to their surface stage dice total. Finally, there are a number of rules for submarines. White results can't be used against submarines at all. One submarine will escape if an odd yellow result remains unpaired in a batch. The naval chart provides 3 escape submarine boxes to keep track of this. Finally, Step E is the battle debrief. In this phase, players remove eliminated units from the world map and reorganize command stacks if desired. And that sums up the quick battle rules. The third and final item we're going to discuss in this video is the Nano Expansion. Nano in this instance means tiny, as component-wise this is a very small expansion. Essentially, it's 20 double-sided markers. One side has a symbol for convoy casualty, and the other side has a symbol for a dive submarine. This expansion will be included with the second edition, but it's available right now at the Nightingale store for $2 plus shipping and handling. There are rules for each side of the marker, so let's discuss them, beginning with convoy casualty. When implementing the Nano Expansion rules, during a convoy raid, each convoy symbol lost also generates a casualty token. These tokens are placed on the submarine space of the morale board. Both lost convoys and submarines result in 6 casualty points each. So in our example, if one convoy symbol of each color is lost, it would generate 3 convoy casualty tokens. This would add 18 casualty points to the convoy's owner. so convoy raids have a much greater impact on casualties and potentially a nation's homeland status. Next, let's talk about the dive submarine side of the token. Submarines which escape by diving during battle may optionally now escape the sea region of the battle, ignoring pinning, and immediately move to any adjacent sea region at the end of the battle debrief. When splitting from a command, dive submarines are placed under a new command token. They are not allowed to merge with an existing command. The dive submarine token is placed on the escaped submarine to indicate that these units may not be involved in any conflict or raid in their new region for the rest of the current round, nor may they eliminate unguarded enemy troop transports in any region. However, dive submarines may move even if all enemy units were eliminated in the battle, and move into enemy-occupied regions as well. Multiple escaped submarines may split up and move to different adjacent sea zones. Dive submarine tokens are removed at the beginning of Phase 5 Refit and Deploy. Once the dive token is removed, submarines operate under their normal rules again. And those are just 3 of the new rules and updated features for War Room the 2nd edition. There are also several advanced rules to look forward to in the final game, a new North Africa scenario, as well as a new set of optional quick play rules. If you want to learn more, the new War Room 2nd edition rulebook is posted at the Nightingale Games website. And as you can now see, although this is a slightly revised edition of the game, there are plenty of new rules and features that make it well worth checking out. If you found this video helpful, please give me a like and share with your friends. To be the first notified when the next episode of Harsh Rules becomes available, please hit the bell icon for notifications. And as always, this has been Harsh for Harsh Rules. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.